everybody listening, Dan Giffin, I host the Ableton podcast. Thanks, Alberto. For everybody listening online, we have Tony McCall. He is the managing director of Ableton for the Americas. We have Alberto Chapa. He is leading up a lot of business development. He wears a lot of hats at Ableton. Super grateful for Ableton hosting the first live audience for the podcast today. And stoked that all of you are able to be here. We have a bunch of questions submitted that we're going to talk about with the leadership. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to go into talking with the producer panel, doing some Q&As that was submitted online. So let's dive into it. Kind of getting started, big picture. I wanted to get an answer from both of you about what Ableton really looks like today in 2025, in your opinion. So when you think of Ableton as a company, like what are some things that come to your mind?
One of the things that I would say that comes to my mind, I started actually working indirectly with Ableton when the brand first launched. And one of the things that struck me about the company and the founders of the company was the heart. It was different than some of the other companies that we were working with. The other companies were great, but the heart was different. 25 years later, with some gaps in between, that heart is still there, and I think that's, for me, is kind of impressive. Because over time, when things grow and change, often you lose heart or you lose your north star. And I think it still is a company that is focused on making an impact on music culture, and is really focused on the musicians and and the art that they're making and the instruments that we make for them.
Alberto, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Tony said it really well, and I think for me it's the values and the mission, and it feels like Ableton in 2025, rather than saying, what is everybody else doing? Sure, it's taken into account, but it's mostly comparing, like checking back on our values and our mission more so than rushing to the next thing that's happening.
There's been a lot of creative partnerships over the years at Ableton. I know there's a lot of examples like Moises. They took some of their technology for the new stem separation. That's in Ableton 12.3, Ableton Live 12.3. There's also obviously Cycling 774 was a big part of Max for Live being built inside of Live. So as all these partnerships are emerging and the products keep growing, is there a process, or how does Ableton decide which opportunities really fit into the future of the products in the company?
I think that it changes depending upon what particular the task is at hand or what we're trying to do. But I don't think we try to necessarily reinvent the wheel. There's some companies that'll do that. It's like, okay, now we got to make our own version of this. So I think that takes some humility too, and also recognizing the other great creators out there in the world of music making products that we could partner with to make to deliver these kind of capabilities and within Ableton Live. Sometimes though, we might go about it our own way and might take a little bit longer. Sometimes people ask, why don't you put this thing in there? And then somebody will say, finally you guys put it in there. But usually it's also, wow, this is great because it doesn't disrupt the workflow, or doesn't disrupt how I work in Live. And I think that's one of the impressive things. Like if you open up Live, it does look different than Live 1.0, but it's not really that much different. But if you take some of the other great DAWs that are out there, they look dramatically different than what they did when they started. And so I think there's making sure that we maintain the integrity of the workflow. You might want to...
No, that's really well said. I think somebody that comes from the playback world, I've always appreciated that any new update takes stability into consideration first before just rushing, again, into the next big thing that everybody's supposed to do.
I'm sure there's a lot of strong opinions of what people want as features in the new updates.
Ask them.
Get that a lot. Yeah.
We debate that internally. We actually have different channels. I mean, now it's Slack that we use, but when people have like suggestions internally, and then also they bring things that our users, the community, would put forward, and then we'll go back and forth on that. Sometimes when somebody says, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want this feature, and then it's really understanding what the end goal is, and then trying to figure out how that is incorporated so that we don't end up with a Homer car, if you're any Simpsons fans. So it's like, otherwise we would just have this DAW that has all this stuff in it.
Very bloated, I'm sure. And then not stable, and people would be sad on stage. That would be, not good. Can you give a recent example of a partnership or new technology? I mentioned the stem separation, obviously. A new technology or partnership that really excited either of you personally, or maybe the team from what you've heard from Berlin?
Yeah, I was really excited for Splice to be integrated in the browser. It's like such a surprise. And the way it was integrated it felt like it kept both personalities, both brands are present there. And it opens up a lot of really creative uses, like Carter's in the audience, and I saw this really cool video he did where he was like hocketing, basically, just dragging a bunch of different clips. And for me, that ability to be playful and spontaneous, but have some like actual usable creative result is really important in a DAW. And I felt like that Splice integration really nailed it. At first, it felt like it would be a totally utilitarian addition. But then that's the cool thing about the community. You start seeing how people start using utilities and tools in creative ways, and then they turn into musical objects, basically.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good example. So talking about new technologies, AI is a really hot topic right now among many industries. Obviously, music production is a big part of that. Are there any areas of development that Ableton sees a lot of value for its users in that area? Or have you heard anything from maybe Berlin or other team members of like, this is an area of AI that maybe we should really explore?
We have to kill him if we told him.
Lock the doors.
Dude, what do we want to do?
I would never fight you, Tony, just so you know.
You would win. No, I think we generally don't comment on like the future thing, but I think maybe just like, I guess it's safe to say this philosophically, we want to figure out, again, what is the most useful or meaningful thing, not just let's just glop this thing onto live. There's some people that are fearful of AI. That's like, oh my gosh, it's just going to take over. It's just going to generate music, and this is going to be boring, or scary. Now I don't have my livelihood. However, I think there's a lot of people that make music that there's it's like assistance. There's ways to assist. Even like if you think of stem separation, I was thinking about this the other day. I guess maybe if the major labels would have just released the stems from the beginning, we would need stem separation, right?
That's it. That's an interesting thought.
Same thing that happened with MP3, right? When that's how there's a great book on that too, how the music got free. I think that's the name of the book if you're interested in it. But I was thinking it's like the same thing with I like to cook, but I don't want to go home and gather firewood and light a fire and wait for 3 hours to get my stove on. So if I could have some assistance, that would be great. So that's called the oven. And maybe I want to bake brownies. I don't want to take the box, but that's the part that I can do on my own where I can get creative. But somebody else has covered that with the oven. So that's a weird analogy. But it's like, wow, this guy's, strange. But anyways, I think it's more like, what can we do that would help assist people? Because also you have limited time. I mean, a lot of people aspire to make art, aspire to make music, but that might not be what they do all the time. They have other things that fill up their life. That's not necessarily officially Ableton, but I think that's kind of like the spirit of like, what can we do that would help people make part of the journey a little bit easier? Although we do acknowledge that music making is hard. So, and I think I appreciate that about Ableton. It's not just drop something in and hit a space bar and then everything's hunky-dory.
Right. Yeah, and that kind of squashes some of the creativity behind it as well. We had Flostradamus who did a big presentation on AI here yesterday for the weekend retreat that we hosted, and he had a lot of really interesting points about AI, and it all basically went down to just work smarter, not harder. Not necessarily that you're taking the creativity out of it, but it's just another tool in your tool shed that you can pull out to expand that. And I think that kind of also builds off. I'd be really curious to see personally, what maybe future AI technology could be built in to enhance that creativity rather than just building everything in-house. Who else is doing something really special that can be partnership? That would be interesting to see. I know you can't talk too much about that, but go ahead.
It's a game changer for sure, but it feels like this is an industry built on complaining about the new thing ruining what's already been established historically. And I guess it's like really up to us living in this present moment to decide how we use it and what direction we take it.
I would also say encourage everyone in the room and that's watching online, share with us, because we definitely do listen. We do listen, and often we just post whatever somebody shared with us right into the Slack, and then that's where the debate will begin. So,
yeah. So let's kind of flip and turn to a different topic and talking about maybe some of the challenges that the company has faced. In your personal opinions, what are some significant challenges that Ableton potentially faces as a company?
That's a complicated question. We do focus on what we're doing. We focus on our users, but it is a business and there is competition. So we do have to take that into consideration for sure. And I think some things, there's a lot more potential for people to create just, everybody makes a DAW, like you have tons of DAWs out there. I think that's a challenge for us, but I think one of the things is that it's more than just making the DAW. There's a lot more that goes into it, and I think that's one thing, for example, in live that I appreciate is the workflow, the elegance of how you go about, creating and making music. So we have to kind of balance those two things. I think the other thing is that also hardware is different. I mean, it's mainly been a software company for many years, and then we made hardware. And the hardware that we make is, I mean, I know I work for the company, but I think it's really good. But it's no trivial task to make that hardware, and that's a challenge too. There's also fixed cost in that, and just say Gerhard spared no expense. You're getting the Mercedes at a Toyota value.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, is there any specific challenges, maybe an example with the hardware that you have had with the release of maybe Push or Move? Is there anything that was like a specific challenge or problem that either of you can think of?
A pandemic. that was one thing, because we were planning on that, and there was we planned on when we were going to launch this, but then we also had to procure the materials, but then there was a shortage of materials and all these other things. So I think that was one challenge. I think one thing that's interesting, that Ableton, even from the very beginning with 1.0, when people see an Ableton product, often they're like, oh yeah, cool. Okay, yeah. And then they just kind of ignore it. And then you see them a year later or whatever, like, oh dude, you gave me that thing. It blew my mind. But at first they kind of just don't understand it. And I think that's you still see that sometimes with people that it's their first experience with live. But with hardware, you see that sometimes where people, they're just like, it's like, oh yeah, that's just a 4-track pad controller. I don't need that for like Move. And then when you actually dig into, you're like, oh, I had no idea that's what this did, and it's a part of this ecosystem, and so that's a challenge too. Is communicating that message, because there's also lots of other products out there that look like it, but they're not the same. They're not the same thing.
True. Yeah, I think Push 3 is a good testament of that. It's a standalone. Obviously, it's married into the software really well. Did you want to say something to that, Alberto? Or?
Well, I just wanted to add, coming from the user world and then the Ableton fan world and then becoming a certified trainer and coming from just like the creative side of the Ableton world, entering the Ableton Inc. business reality of things, and realizing that it's like Tony hinted at, a company just like any other, and it's subject to all the ups and downs of like geopolitics and things like tariffs being a recent thing that impacted hardware, for example, and making sure that none of these things impact the experience of all these lovely users in like an over-the-top way is an interesting side of the business that I didn't really anticipate coming from the user side. I just thought, you work at Ableton, you walk into the building, everybody's making beats. There's like controllers everywhere. There's another Simpsons reference, but Bart goes to Mad Magazine headquarters in New York, and he thinks it's going to be all fun and like cartoon characters, but he enters it and it's just a bunch of writers having a miserable time because they have a deadline.
We have fun.
It's not like that. Yeah.
We do make music.
We do make music, yeah. We've had some fun like link jams when we have company parties that turn into off-hinged karaoke where like people are making atonal beats and then some other colleagues are singing pop songs on top of them. You got to be there. It's really fun.
Yeah, I would love to see and hear that. Yeah, and I think it's also interesting to mention, a lot of people don't know this, but there is a demo room here at the Ableton U.S. headquarters. So somebody,
the showroom.
Showroom, yeah. So people can schedule a time and then come here and try out the hardware products. If maybe they don't understand it or they're curious in experiencing it, maybe they've never played with a move or a push. It's a good opportunity for people to take advantage of that. Anybody listening online?
Yeah, and they can, if they're in the LA Pasadena area, we're on ableton.com /Pasadena-spaces, and people can just book an appointment, come over and try and buy our instruments. We do trade-ins here too, so.
Awesome. Let's also talk a little bit about how Ableton listens to its users. That's one thing that I've always been impressed by, being in center code for the beta releases, and especially with like 12.3 now. I love all the new features. But listening to a lot of the user base, I feel like, is a big part of Ableton culture. And that's one thing I really appreciate. I know there's been times where I'm constantly like annoying Alberto and being like, this should be a thing, or this should be a thing. And occasionally, sometimes those things actually become a reality just from listening to users. Can you give a specific example of user feedback that has directly influenced a major feature or a product decision at Ableton?
I was thinking about that. I think the most obvious one is the beta platform center code. Like, just go on center code and each topic is a conversation being addressed directly to the developers. So when you join a public beta, you're directly contributing to the development of the software. And you mentioned the release date, and that's one of the funny things about working at Ableton. There are no release dates. We have release goals, but most people ask me, when is this or that coming out? And the annoying-ish answer is when it's ready. And that goes back to making sure that the products are bulletproof, because the last thing y'all want or we want is to put out a product that just needs debugging and debugging and debugging. And when it's finally right, we release the next version. And then you get to help us debug that in real time. So I always appreciated that. It's at first it's a very private process in like alpha testing, a little behind the scenes. It's like by invitation only. Then after alpha testing, there's a private beta process where, again, invitation only. You start interacting with the software and giving us feedback. And then right now we're in public beta, which means it's like opening the floodgates. Let's see if like millions of people start using the software, what kind of bugs can be revealed. And I just find that really interesting because we're all contributing to it without really realizing it.
And anybody can sign up for beta, right?
When it's public.
When it's public, yeah. Any specific feature that comes to mind that you guys can relate to specific user feedback that you've really enjoyed?
Comping.
Yeah, comping is
Creative
great.
comping,
That
yeah.
was nice. I'm a big fan of that. For all the audio recording people.
Auto shift.
Auto shift was a
another
nice,
one.
yeah, for real. That was big. I was just talking to Tim Underbelly about that the other day. And also, it's like very CPU friendly, which I'm a big fan of, and that's not always true for a lot of autotune.
Yeah, I mean, another one is a standalone push. Like when push 2 was out, the number one input that I would hear being out in the field and talking to people was, it would be really cool if you could just take this anywhere and you didn't need a computer, and if it had inputs and if you could control CV, and you'd kind of get this wish list accumulating of all the things. And when I saw the first announcement internally for a push 3, it felt like it checked all the boxes. I was like living conversations from the past with somebody that like really wanted a CV control out of push. And it's like, check. ADAT, check. Built-in interface, check. So I think that's another example of something where we like really heard what people needed and had to really reinvent a few wheels, like the encoders on push 3, the pads on push 3 were all these things that had to be developed in order to address the fact that it has twice as much technology, like just physically space-wise in push 3 than push 2 in a smaller footprint.
Yeah, I'm a big fan personally. I think it's a great product. Talking more about creative and personal side of things with either of you involved in the company, you both wear a lot of hats. I know that you're both very, very busy people between leadership, events, business strategy. How much time do you guys actually get to make music these days for yourselves?
I think like everybody here, it's the time that you make. Like you have to make time if it's important to you. Sometimes life becomes a little bit more chaotic, or there's a little bit more on our plates, and sure, that gets to shift. But I feel like Tony and I talk about what we worked on over the weekend pretty frequently if I'm at the office. Tony and I are both guitar players, so we kind of talk shop about that. And, whether I'm sitting down and making like a full project in live all the time, maybe not, but I'm always sitting down playing an instrument, whether it's move, push, guitar, drums, or something like that.
Yeah, I think about it a lot. I'm inspired a lot, and then I get time to do it. But I think one thing that I love move, because one of the things is like when he was talking a bit about getting away from the computer, you're on the computer so much. I still open live and get excited, but it's just sometimes I don't want to see the computer after and so move. I use that move and a syntax and a little recorder, and then that's how I'll start writing my ideas, and then I can port that over to live when I want to develop it. So.
Yeah, it's a really cool controller that has kind of its own specific use case in my mind, and it's obviously a lot lighter than a push. It's more, travelable. So, you could take it up on a mountaintop and jam out with yourself if you wanted to, without getting a heavy workout with a push 3. That's one use for me.
You play drums. Have you ever used your eDrums as a controller into Move?
I haven't used it in Move. No, I've done that with push, but not with Move. So that would be a cool use case. Yeah, there's a lot of options there for sure. Would you say that most people at the company are musicians themselves in some way, or producers?
Yes, the majority. It's more rare that you meet someone that it doesn't make music. I would say it's predominantly music makers, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So
too many creatives. Yeah. They're right-brained.
Sometimes it says Ableton feels like one big giant art project. and oh yeah, we got to pay for this art project. But I mean, and I come from that background of somebody playing music that then came into this world. So I include myself in that. It was driven more by the passion of making music and the products than it was I'm going to go out and make $1 million, in the music industry. Probably not where you would want to go make $1 million.
It might be pretty hard today sometimes for a lot of people. If you could change one thing about Ableton, or maybe if it's not one thing about Ableton, because I don't want to get you fired, but
the world
feels like a setup right now.
If you could change maybe one thing about either the company or a product, what would it be?
Actually, one thing that we're trying to do is it is changing. So this is something is getting a little bit faster at what sometimes was painfully long to make decisions, and I think that's one thing. So I think maybe some of you've noticed that like dot releases come out quicker. We've always been kind of thinking like that, but it's always like, I don't know, it's not ready yet. It's not perfect yet. Sort of like doing your mix. My mix isn't ready. Can you share some music with me? It's not ready yet. So I think maybe a little more confidence to be quicker. That's something that is good. It's good that we do take our time because there's a thoughtfulness, which I very much appreciate, but that would be one thing.
Yeah, that's good.
This is a really hard question for me. And I'm not just saying it as an Ableton employee. I feel like this software has already given me so much. Like these tools have empowered me to see myself as an artist. And I don't expect the tools to be the solution or the company to have to like change to make me feel better. I feel like it's already on a pretty good track. But I think Tony really hit the nail on the head on like we're entering a stage of change that's really different from before in the sense of we used to be the only asynchronous DAW where you could have like a session view, and now that's not as unique. And a lot of the things that made us unique are now shared among a lot of other DAWs. So I think focusing on the community, focusing on what we've built and like the reputation of our products is what's going to get us into the future. So I feel like kind of relying on what we've done well and having the confidence, I would even say with that like quickness, to achieve that quickness with confidence of knowing that we've already made a pretty good impact on music culture with this DAW and these tools, and we're like already sort of set in a very positive direction that would take a lot of negative intention to like redirect that ship, if that makes any sense. So I feel like that confidence of knowing that like we've got the right intentions and the right mission, and now we just need to adapt certain changes in culture and society.
I think it's a tricky question, especially when you have a company that is, continuing to grow. It's been a big part of a certain industry, and then there's a lot of technology behind the scenes involved. That could be pretty tough.
And Ableton used to be the new kid on the block, and I don't think most people see us that way anymore. So I think it's also filling those shoes, or like being confident in knowing that we're not a startup anymore. We're entering this new era in the company as well.
Yeah. Where do you think music production or performance will be in about 10 years from now? If you had to just make a guess, like what does that look like in your head?
Completely made by robots.
I think the opposite. I'm thinking, I feel a tendency to go off grid. I really feel like youth culture always rebels against the status quo, and the status quo is us right now. We are all users of electronic tools, and I feel like somebody that's 12 looks at somebody my age like using these tools, and they may not be as attracted to them because they associate it with an older generation. So I do feel, and I'm excited because I come from off-grid music, and I use live in really interesting off-grid ways for signal processing and tracking and just, creative outlets. But I do feel like that's the direction of the, like, Rosalia had this really cool thing recently where she was talking about how AI is like capable of doing anything, but she's working on human sounding music made out of like wooden instruments and brass instruments and things that have human feeling and emotion behind them, because now that's apparently unique. And recently I heard somebody say of like, now, if they want to see a perfect performance, you can just generate an AI performance. But I feel like mistakes, imperfections, human flaws, those are going to be so rare to find that people are going to be seeking those out. And I have a feeling like we're going to be giving standing ovations for mistakes and like wrong notes in the future, because that's the most human thing you can be. And to be human in front of other people, I think is a beautiful thing. And it's a great thing to share with an audience too.
I would agree with him.
Tony says same. I had a good conversation with several people on the podcast about this in previous episodes. About, that's a classic example of how mistakes can really influence creativity and make it better in some ways. I mean, you look at a tape machine, right? You had tape machines for a while, and then they were like, oh, we can go digital now. And then you go digital, and now people are making emulations of tape machines because, there's like too much noise, too much of this, too long to record. Well, now you can record faster, but you still miss that tape saturation, that nice warm tape sound that people miss. I think it's going to be kind of similar in a sense for new technology and AI, like, those imperfections. That's what's going to make it more human. And I think that's what a lot of people connect with. So yeah, I totally agree. Well, that was pretty much all the questions I had for you guys right now before we jump to the producer panel. But Tony, Alberto, thank you so much for doing this interview. It means a lot to me, all you do for the community. You guys are a huge staple in empowering a lot of other artists. So huge honor to be here at Ableton, and thank you for all you do. Give it up for them if you guys would.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
You guys might recognize several of these talented young men next to me. I think you've all been on the podcast at this point. Yours hasn't come out yet, but yeah, you guys are all really talented producers in my mind, have been an influencer in the Ableton world of some sorts. I'm going to give each of you a quick introduction for those who maybe don't know you. We have AU5, Austin, right there if you want to wave to the crowd. He's an electronic artist. Yeah, give it up for him. Woo. He is an electronic artist, producer, educator, known for his intricate sound design. He's been released on major labels like Monster Cat, Wakan. He's collaborated alongside Seven Lions, Slander, Mr. Bill. He's a big pioneer of sound design and modern sound with electronic music. He's had over 200 releases, millions of streams worldwide. Other than performing and touring globally at major events, he also teaches music production through his School of Bass masterclass online. And gotten to know this guy pretty recently. It's been really awesome. Super nice guy. We also have next to me Mr. Tim Lineski, aka Underbelly. If you haven't checked out his YouTube channel called You Suck at Producing, it's hilarious. Been really loving his content. It's edutainment, I think, as they call it. And he's an Ableton certified trainer. He's best known for his funny educational videos. He breaks down a lot of really cool music production tips and tricks and sound design. We've been working on a track together recently. Stay tuned for that. He's created a lot of tutorials for DJ Tech Tools, Earmark, and PureMind, a lot of other Ableton certified training centers. He's collaborated with major artists like Lido and Takami, Keys and Crates, Giraffage, Sanholo. The list goes on. So yeah, thanks for being here, dude. Love your music. We also have Tyler Minford, aka Louis Futon. He is a producer, multi-instrumentalist. He's had over 50 million streams. He's been a part of Odeza's Foreign Family Collective, has done tours with Odeza. He's collaborated with Masego, Cherub, Louis the Child, Alice in Wonderland, could keep going. Recently saw you perform in Denver or Boulder. That was actually a really great show, super fun with Cherub. You've had official remixes for Anderson .Paak, many others, and has performed at a lot of major events like Okeechobee, Splash House, the list goes on. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. And last but not least, we have Chuck Sutton, who is an absolute insane Ableton Live maniac who blows my mind every time. Every time I see this guy in person, he opens up the laptop and my brain goes sideways and I get really lost and confused with what he's talking about. But you are an Ableton Live educator who has worked with many notable artists like Ludacris and More Kismet. That's one of my favorite songs. It's a really good song you guys did.
Thank you.
You've collaborated with a lot of major brands such as Ableton, Antares, XLN Audio, Isotope. You had a single on the HBO hit show Insecure. You also created the demo song for Ableton Live 12 release. So yeah, it was a good song. So you've all heard his music probably. But yeah, thanks for being here, man. Love your stuff. So we're going to do a bunch of rapid fire questions that have been submitted to the podcast online, and many of you in this room also submitted them. So we'll just go one by one, have like a pretty quick, brief answer for time-wise, but picking your brain on a bunch of different topics. The first one submitted is more about just mixing in general. People are wondering, how loud are you mixing these days? And how are you measuring that loudness? I know Tim, we were talking about this. He said he likes to stay in the positive LUFS. That's his favorite play. Because he likes that positivity, right? It's just good to stay positive. It's good to stay positive. So yeah, Tim, we'll start with you. What do you think?
Thanks. Nice hat, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, LUFS positivity. So for those who don't know, LUFS stands for loudness units full scale. It's a way of measuring the loudness of your track, kind of more akin to how our ears perceive it as opposed to decibels. And I mean, recently there's just been an upward trend in electronic music of just getting louder, 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 more and more and more crushed, to the point where it's just become a part of the DNA of so much bass music, dubstep, rhythm, shit that I'm really into. So I'm just trying to get as loud as the reference tracks that I'm putting into my project, which these days is like -3 LUFS, -4 LUFS. And really the only way to get there these days is to just clip the master, which that was like one of the first things I learned not to do when I first started producing. That was like, if you clip, it's game over. But these days it's the only way I found to get the ridiculous loudness standard for bass music today. So, yeah.
When it comes to my mixing and mastering, I notoriously have had songs where that was such a little priority for me. I was more so focused on the sound design and trying to get the mixes warm. I'm primarily a headphone producer, so I think what I was doing in early days is I'd crank the volume for my headphones, mix it to that level, and then it'd end up being way too quiet on streaming platforms, or the bass would be too loud. So over time, what I've been trying to do is get a reference level that's loud enough to play at an EDM show, but also works at an R&B show. To get a little bit like philosophical real quick, I've noticed that the highest frequencies are kind of the most like sensory blinding. And then when the mids are really loud, In some places it's good, in some places not, but I can't think my own thoughts as much. Sometimes I want that EDM experience where my thoughts shut off, but I think to try to blend it with other genres like soul and R&B, I've been trying to get my stuff loud enough to be accepted in the EDM space, but just like quiet enough that you can actually think your own thoughts is like what I try to go for.
Well, I make a lot of dubstep, but that being said, I do find myself doing really targeting -6 to -5 LUFS. And the reason why is it's been an interesting exploration for me because I want to push things really loud, but I find that in doing so, yeah, you get, there are compromises. And for me, the whole LUFS exploration is more so like on the timbral end, where how can I make something loud but also preserve its clarity or its detail or its perceived dynamics? And for me, that's kind of what is interesting about trying to get stuff really loud, is not actually to have the track just like super loud and superior to, you know, everyone else's in terms of loudness, because also with streaming platforms we have loudness normalization. So a lot of times I'm shooting for loudness more so from like the perspective of sound design and clarity, and it's really opened my eyes to like things like tonal balance and microdynamics more. So for me, yeah, it's kind of just it's a reference. If I can push something loud, then it's typically balanced enough to serve the mix down, if that makes sense. That's my take.
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback off that actually, because I usually aim for -7 to -9 LUFS. But I agree with what Austin said. I mean, perceived loudness is huge as well. If it sounds good, it sounds good. And I find that, I mean, there is a quality loss if you go too loud on Spotify. I've had friends ask me, hey, why does my track sound so much different on Spotify than in my DAW? I'm like, oh, you're pushing that way too hard. So I never like to push it too hard. I guess I'm more of a neutral force in the loudness wars. I'm more like Sweden. I don't know.
Yeah, it's good answers. Thanks, guys. Next question. When you hit a creative wall, what's your go-to move in live to get unstuck? Is there a specific technical trick or organizational tip or something that kind of helps you get out of that rut?
Watch videos of Chuck's retreat talks. No, I mean, resampling for real is a great technique. If I'm just working on a sound and I have no idea what to do with it, I'm getting crazy bored, I'm just like throwing it into granulator, or I'm just doing some sort of crazy resampling technique just to break myself out of the rut. Or just honestly take a break and, I don't know, go outside, look at a tree, maybe even play a real instrument. So, I mean, yeah, honestly, I'm so locked to the screen like 8-9 hours a day that just being able to focus on one instrument, one sound, one musical idea at a time rather than getting lost in the sauce is just a great way for me to reframe and sort of center back. So, yeah.
I think we all put pressure on ourselves to like make quality rather than, you know, if you're inspired, you can just look outside and nature and people walking kind of make the quality for you to just like reflect on. So there's this one technique I do with my students where I pull up a piano in Ableton and I say, give me 5 notes. Don't worry about music theory. I'm not looking for it to sound cohesive. It can sound like the ugliest thing. I turn off the grid. I move those notes, maybe just in a bar or 2 bars. They're close enough. And then I just ask them to put 3 random effects on that piano and we just sit and listen. What does that sound like to us? Does it sound so atonal that it's going to work for percussion, or is there 2 notes out of the 5 that sound good together? And it's a moment to sit and just like face the unknown, kind of like when you're looking at a cloud in the sky and you think it looks like a ice cream cone. You tell your friend that, they don't see it. What you usually do is you try to show them and you try to emphasize, oh, look at that point, and then towards the sun, that's the top of the ice cream cone. So it's almost like I end up using Ableton to try to, whatever I thought I heard, just using the tools to shape it more objectively into like what that is. And then the homie Dank Sauce over here, we did a quick chat where I brought this up, and I was like, yo, it'd be really cool to expand upon this, and ended up making like, is this secret information? Can I talk about it? We'll be dropping a Max for Live device. It's a little button that just, you click on it, spams like random audio effects, so there's no bias for you. So you can do this. You can bring in any random melody, make something kind of ugly on purpose, and then spam this thing and just do that. Or even choose audio effects you hate the most and see if you end up making something you like a lot.
Well, there are about 3 things that I typically go to when I'm stuck, particularly in a loop. I'm like, yes, this 8 bars sounds really good. And then I just end up listening to it all day. And then I start to hate it more and more. And then I'm like, how am I supposed to get out of this? One of the first tricks that I discovered that I've been using for over a decade now, since the Logic days, is actually just putting a pitch shifter on the master and hearing the song in a different key. For me, that functions very much, I kind of think of it like, it's like a hue shift of color. You take an image and then you shift all the colors, like, all the reds are now pink and all the greens are now cyan, kind of a thing. And it recontextualizes and just kind of freshes everything up for me. So that's one trick. And then another thing is I like to get outside of the studio, which I feel like these guys already emphasize, but really like rendering something, putting it on my phone, and then like walking around, even just in a different space of my house, and having myself, like having my body move around in different spaces, having different physical stimuli, will change my perception of it. I feel like being locked into the chair, sedentary, kind of just like a floating head, can really only serve you so much, when in reality, we're experiencing music on a much more like emotional and visceral level anyway. So I try to put myself in that environment before it gets too late and the 8 bars just solidifies and rots.
Yeah, getting physical is huge for me in the studio, just working with hardware or, beat pad or whatever, to get myself out of that computer. But also, like, we just don't need to put that much pressure on ourselves when we're making music. You think about, like, in baseball, I think like a 25, .250 batting average is pretty good for a hitter. That's 25%. That's like 1 in 4. I think we can all agree that most of the music that we make is probably trash. And there's a couple of them that, make it to the finish line, but we're just having fun and we don't need to put that much pressure on ourselves. But within Ableton, I like to just start my songs in different ways. Everyone asks me, how do you start a song? Just switch it up every time. Sometimes work off of like now that Splice is in Ableton, it makes it a lot easier. Drag a vocal in, try to produce around that, and then make it something different, resample it, whatever, or like start with a drum beat, or just surprise yourself, Good
answers. Good stuff. Honest question, which one of you has the messiest live projects? Yeah.
Probably me.
Yeah. Tyler says that he has the worst projects. So what do you guys do as far as like organizational tips? Like if you had to give one organizational tip to somebody out here who has messy projects, what would it be?
My projects are a complete disaster up until I try and mix it. So when I try and mix it, I bounce out all the stems to audio and I create a new project. I rename everything, I color code everything, I group everything. Because otherwise, when I'm working on a mix with like 100, 120 tracks, it's just a nightmare, right? And the only way I could really make sense of any of it is to do that workflow. So yeah, it's a disaster until I really force myself to commit to the song and get into the mix. And then it's actually somewhat easy to look at.
I have to call you out because we're collabing right now, and you did not name a lot of those tracks. That's true. We haven't mixed. That's fair. Yeah, we are in the mixing stage, so that's true. All right. Anyway, I had to keep you honest.
Yeah. I think my project files are so messy. If I left a laptop somewhere and someone found in like 20 years, a cult would form over trying to figure out what was going on. So I don't know. We're gonna have to check after this. We should have all prepared a screenshot of like, show us your messiest project file to judge. So we'll do that later. But I would say the main thing, I guess I have 2 modes, because one, I make music, but I also make stock devices, and that's where I started to learn being more like cleanlier, because it's one thing when I'm using the project for myself, but if you're going to sell or give that project file to someone else to use in their own time without reaching back out to you, there's a whole different mentality. So I'll give you 2 tips. One, just straight up color. Like even if it's specific to that project file, if you zoom out and you remember you're putting all the bass tracks in a yellow group and you're putting all the vocals in a red group that time, blue and green the next time, I think that's a good way to just remember where to get back into things. And then in terms of building devices and effects racks, adding colors and names to the actual macros, because when you hit map and you see all the different settings you have, they're all going to be color coded. And the worst thing is when I have like 5 racks nested in one another and they're all gray and they're all called macro 1 or macro 5 and I can't remember what they did. And I guess quick little one is you can right click on macros and tracks and do edit info text, and it allows you to write your own thing in the help view for like, so you can leave a reminder of what it was, like a little post-it note on the wall.
A couple things. So firstly, I have an auto load that is basically just a group where there's a MIDI track and an audio track in each one. I have drums, effects, melodic stuff, and basses. And for me, it's just enough structure to where I can still feel very free creatively and compositionally, but it makes it very easy to just organize, kind of just in a broad stroke kind of way, what I'm creating, where that's supposed to go. And then, pre-routing those things to a sidechain bus. But then the other thing that I do, that I've been doing more lately, is I'll have a dummy MIDI track at the very top, just having blank MIDI clips. And then I will color code different sections of the song, because sometimes I don't write songs in a linear fashion, or I will rearrange the arrangement of the song. And I find that having MIDI clips as just placeholders, determining like what is the verse, build, chorus, drop, whatever, for visual reference, and being able to color code them in terms of how much progress I've made on them. So like red would be like still very rough, or I'm like unsure of it, or green is something like put a producer lock on that, don't mess with that. And then being able to basically cut and paste time to rearrange the song if it needs to has been kind of a workflow game changer for me.
That's great. You guys all crushed it. I'm going to be taking these tips. No, I think, besides the obvious, grouping and naming everything and color coding, a lot of the work is done beforehand, and I highly recommend everyone listening takes time to set up a template that they know where everything is and all their buses are, all their vocal buses or whatever, because when you hop into a session with someone else, it just makes things so much easier. And you just have everything right there. And obviously that's going to get out of control as you add more tracks and stuff. But I don't know. That's the biggest thing.
Cool. Yeah, good stuff. Nice pro tips. What's the weirdest sample you've ever used in a track that you actually released?
Fart noise.
I can say I had a real goose problem. Anybody who's been listening to the podcast long enough, I had a ton of geese outside of my apartment by this lake. And if you listen to a lot of the earlier episodes, you'll hear them honking in the background. And so instead of fighting them, I embraced them, and I ended up sampling them. I had a goose sample pack that I released as a remix competition. Output and Isotope officially sponsored it. So the tracks were really great, and there was a lot of good goose honks in there. So I wanted to share that for myself.
My sister did this like awesome short film. It's the first one that I scored, and I had a lot of fun with the theme song. It has this like chopped up neo soul vibe with this like really breathy sax, which was an auto-tuned arm fart, not to be confused with the regular fart.
I hope the geese were compensated in some way.
That's true. They're not getting their royalties at this point, but Don't tell them. Don't let them know.
For me, probably, this was a long time ago, 2013, I released a song called Blossom, and decided to record myself biting into a carrot, and it sounded really nice. And I just spammed that sound throughout the song as like a pre-shift kind of clap sound to the snare. I don't know why, but that was the essential ingredient that really made it pop. And it's kind of like a low-key insider meme in my producer community Discord.
You have to do a live show where you have a ton of carrots next to you in a real snare and just go through it.
I support that idea.
Noted.
For me, well, songs that were released, the weirdest thing was probably I went to IKEA with Ryan from Party Peoples, and we just like sampled a bunch of stuff, and then it ended up turning into a really dope song. But songs that I haven't released, I've done like, I don't know, a restaurant, those beepers, the ding, 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 ding. I was like, how can I make this annoying ass sound kind of cool? And I think I did a decent job, but I guess not, because it's not released, but yeah.
It was a good effort though, right? That's what matters, as long as you're trying your best. That's good. If you could add one new feature to one of Ableton's products, like Live Push, Move, or Note, what would it be if you could only pick one?
Extract all chains from a drum rack. Been asking for that one for years, guys. Yeah, that'd be it.
This one's kind of nerdy, but hopefully I was thinking earlier today, and I think it can help people in like not that nerdy of a way, in like a regular way. I'm using the macros a lot, and it usually says 0 through 127. And a lot of us might be using effects racks where you have an entire knob just dedicated to like reverb on off, flanger on off. I was thinking if you could name each state 0 through 127, and in the help, the little info view thing, there's just a little list you could scroll like 0, 127, kind of like the scene naming thing. It would look like that, but over there. So you could write like you have an effects chain. It's like chorus, flanger, reverb. So you just have one macro that you could name different states if you're like choosing things. Or maybe you have like, now that I'm thinking about it, let's say you have an auto filter where you mainly want to know 0 through 127, but there's like a sweet spot. So you just like scroll to the sweet spot and like name it that, or name a couple of them sweet spots. So as you get there, there's like 10 or 12 little names over the, maybe like shift click all of them and just write sweet spot. So then it's like, oh, like during my live show, like I want to be right there for this moment. And just because I've been in there so much, and 0 through 127 gets a little bit vague and arbitrary for kind of living in it. So
That actually would be really sick. I think one way you could do it is with the macro variations, and then you use Smooth Automator to blend through all the macro variations. But I don't know how many macro variations can you have, because I don't think it would be up to 127. Does anybody know? Pop quiz. We'll find that out. We'll report later. Anyway, yeah, but that's a cool idea.
Just one feature is kind of torturous to pick out.
It's tough, I know.
I would say alias clips. And what I mean by that is this is something that Logic had, which is one of the very few things that I missed, is if you have one clip that is one sequence of MIDI over and over throughout the song, changing one of them changes all of them. And for me, I find myself, the way that I write and compose, I'll typically use the same thing in the first chorus and the second chorus, and then decide to tweak like either the MIDI or just a note here and there. And oftentimes I find myself like going back and having to figure out, okay, which ones weren't changed. And so it would just be a workflow saver for me to just have alias clips.
That's such a sick idea. And I also feel like I could see it, because I guess when you have a clip looping, it kind of UI presents that way. Like there's the little 3 lines for the take lanes, that they're just little 3 lines like by the MIDI clip, and it had like alias states or something like that. That could be a cool way to just like sneak it in there. That's dope.
Yeah, I would love that.
That really gets me going. That's great. It's great. I'd say going back to the organizational stuff. There's a couple things from like Cubase that I really like, which is that you're able to search for something within the project, like the actual channels themselves. So say I'd have something called like weird synth, and I have to normally like scroll through, open the groups, and I just want to get there. I just want to get from point A to point B as fast as I can if I forgot where it was.
Be a cool native feature. I think there's a Max for Live device that does that. I guess that's a beautiful thing about Max for Live too, right? Is it can solve a lot of problems. Not everything, but
yeah.
I forget. I'm blanking on the name of it.
I'll have to get that. But another thing that is kind of related to that, I know you said one thing, but just minimizing stuff within the project. So almost like, okay, I don't want to see the delay compensation lane. I don't want to see this group until I want to work with it. And so I can work within maybe just like 2 groups that I really want to focus on. And then I can maximize the other groups as I, feel like I need to work on.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Yeah, go ahead, Chuck. Chuck solved it already.
No. It's super quick. Sorry. Just one thing that's already in the program is if you have a effects rack, if you right click in the lower right corner, it gives you a list. I've been adding so many effects. I learned that you can't scroll on that list, and I've been needing to scroll to see everything that's in a chain without scrolling through. So it's already kind of a thing there. And even if you zoom all the way out to 50%, you can still have so many effects that it will not scroll. And I feel like more in the bass sound design world, you're going to find that. So being able to scroll on that, thank you.
So
Amen.
Everybody shared multiple things. That's great. Next question. For anybody who maybe is new, wanting to learn Ableton Live, or somebody going much deeper, if you had to recommend one YouTube channel or Ableton Live educator, influencer, if you will, other than yourself, pick one person.
I mean, I picked these guys right here.
I agree.
But I've also been following the Caracal Project's Patreon. He has a lot of gems, production gems there. Yeah.
Damn, that's a tough one. Honestly, probably Virtual Riot. I'd say every time I watch his videos, I'm inspired. And I feel like there are a lot of parallels, but the way that he thinks is always just re-inspiring something in me. Maybe I came to the same conclusion, but then he'll just take it to a totally another level in a different direction that I wouldn't have thought of. And so, yeah, he's always very inspiring, very, at least for me, easy to understand, and quick too, very stimulating and dense.
Hi, I'm not Underbelly, and I suck at producing.
That was a pretty good impression. I like that.
I've wanted to do that for a while, and this was the moment. I've definitely sat in bed watching these 3 just on YouTube at night, so I definitely recommend these 3. I would say 2 special sources. We have a homie, an amazing Ableton producer, Underscores, and she has these phenomenal albums in which once on Twitch she did speedruns, video game speedruns, but of her album where people were in chat, and she just speed ran through every single thing she did, no secrets. But then that also brings me to the main YouTube channel I love, which is just called Musical Streams. And someone out there is just doing a compilation of I'll see these guys, I'll see Lo-File, I'll see Tennyson. And it's just, I think watching a producer not even trying to educate you, doing something educational, Kaylin Ellis as well, I have to shout out. You will see them do something in the moment and have a real aha. And I think you learn more from that than when someone's trying to streamline their information, because they're going to do that abstract thing that just works that they might not be able to put into words.
Hell yeah. Other than everybody in this room, of course, Mr. Bill. Learned so many freaking techniques from that guy. Using the spectrum to measure how much sub you have. Fucking game changer for bass music. So yeah, shout out.
Yeah, it's a very extensive list. I could keep going, but yeah, everybody, I chose you guys for a reason. I think you're all very talented. Some of you teach more than others, but a lot of good resources you guys have as well. Cool. Also check out the link in the show notes, because I'm going to include links to everybody talking today on this episode. If you guys want to follow these guys some more. 2 more quick questions. Well, 2.5 really. Do you have a preferred way to connect multiple synths or external gear to live right now? I know some of you are in the box more than others, but as far as gear-wise, is there any workflow that you find really useful or valuable?
I just have a mixer where I have, my mini log, my Super 6, and a guitar and bass just ready to go. And then my piano also mic'd up and just ready to go. I think having everything just ready to freaking go if you have an idea is the best way. And so I don't know, they're all going into one channel right now, but if I ever need more separation or whatever, I'm getting a synth noise from something, then I can really dial it in or something. But yeah.
I feel like I'm the most novice in this category because I'm just so in the box. I would like to have a better system for workflow, and honestly, a lot of times, when I want to pick up the guitar or bass or an actual synth, hardware synth, that I'm like, I don't have this already set up, so I'll just choose not to and mouse around instead. So, yeah, no.
Yeah. I mean, whatever workflow works for you. That's how I feel. So, yeah.
I mainly use the Push 3 as an instrument. So I know it's kind of designed to be an answer for this question, but it's usually sitting in my lap as everyone's like sitting around making music. So my roommate Handy has the Teenage Engineering TX6. It's a super small mixer. It can fit in your pocket. And I think that's been cool to witness, having such a small little device, because I'm kind of using mine. I might actually be like using it in standalone, trying to run through to like be a part of the rest of the room. So that'll be one. But I'm also super like Ableton stock in the box. So I'm mainly just having people either use the Push or maybe an extra MIDI controller here and there. But that's a really cool one that kind of takes the portability, like, and accessibility of at least the design. It's probably pretty pricey because it's teenage, but it does the job in a really compact way.
Yeah, like these folks, I'm so freaking in the box that this doesn't even apply to me. I mean, recently I just got like an actual studio room for the first time, so I can actually leave all my shit plugged in. Game changer. So much easier to just like pick up a guitar or like sing into a mic or something. So shout out to my Scarlett.
Yeah, we're recording in a Scarlett right now, actually.
Insane.
I do have to shout out CV Tools. If anybody's not familiar with CV Tools, for all you modular people out there, it's just a really great way to sync up the clock and work with modular a lot more seamlessly in the box. I also have to shout out the Push 3. I really like my Push 3. I wish I used it more because I've been such a mouse clicker and in the box this last year, just trying to release more music faster. But I love it, and it can expand a lot of capabilities with CV, as well as, now you can just even plug in an interface, USB. Yeah, you could plug in your Scarlett and expand your inputs. So there's a lot of options there with the Push 3. I think it's a really cool controller. And it also has ADAT, right? So there's a lot of options with routing in and out of it as an interface for anybody who has a Push 3 or is thinking about one. Okay, real quick question. If you were an Ableton Live device, what would you be and why?
Roar.
Why?
I've been trying to learn how to scream lately. So I do like a whisper scream, like, ah, and then I just put roar on it, and I just sound sick.
Actually, that actually would sound pretty cool. Yeah, roar is amazing.
I thought way too long about this, and because I was like, ooh, which one do I get to be? Crazy enough, I'm going to break the rules, and I actually feel most connected to the device view as a whole is my answer of what I would be.
No, you got to pick a device.
Hear me out.
It's too broad.
Hear me out. Hear me out. The reason I feel that way is because, so let's say you have Max for Live, you have Bitwig, you have FL Patcher. I've noticed that those device building things, because they can expand to be a second window, you can forget about music when you're building in them. And what I like about this view is no matter how crazy you get, you can't not focus on the music as the priority. So it's like infinite, but like us talking is the largest thing on the screen. And I feel like infinite, but music is the point, which is why people like my type of infinity. Have I convinced y'all yet?
That's very existential. I feel like that's a very Chuck answer.
EQ3. I'll be EQ3, okay?
Thank you, Chuck. That was a beautiful answer.
this is not interesting at all because I have not thought about this at all. But I have a very personal connection with multiband dynamics. And I mean, to relate it to myself, God, this is so cheesy, but I feel like I'm quite versatile and adaptable, and often to potentially to a detrimental extent as far as flexibility goes. And I mean, how I use multiband dynamics is often an excuse for like proper EQing. You know, this shit is redlining. Just slap this on. Cool. We're all evened out again. Everything's all good.
It's a good answer. It makes sense to me.
I'd be a gate because, you really just got to be careful about who you let into your life. You know what I'm saying?
Preach, fam.
I think that wins. That's a good one. Good life lesson for all of us, really. There's a lot we could learn from this question. For myself, if I had to choose, I would say glue compressor, because I feel like I have a pretty diverse friend group and people I interact with. And so I just kind of like, squeeze all of them together, kind of in a group like you would, maybe like this.
Yeah, you do.
We got a lot of people here. Cool. All right. Last but not least question. Are you using AI, if at all, and what are you using it for?
Oh, man, I feel like this conversation is being had in the last 2 weeks in the music industry. So many of my friends are hitting me up about this. Everyone's kind of afraid to use it right now. But most of the people who I talk to are willing to use it. But within Ableton specifically, stem separation and finding other drums is a great application of AI and ethical. So I don't think anyone's afraid to use that. But in the broader scope of AI, we're all kind of scared and don't know. We're like, should we use it? No. No. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird place right now.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I have been pretty against using AI tools, particularly like audio tools, for a while, or anything that's artistic. But as of a couple weeks ago, I did start experimenting with Suno and feeding it my ideas. And something that I've actually gotten out of this has been the way that it, I guess, interpolates or interprets certain sounds, because it has this very interesting effect where, like, you could especially hear it in voices, like vocals, where it almost sounds like it's combining different ways of singing in one. And same thing with more abstract and obscure sounds like bass sounds. It'll present a texture that I haven't really heard before, and I will try to. It inspires me to try to recreate that, because I love just recreating sounds that I hear like from other tracks and stuff. And after doing that so much, it's like, okay, I kind of know how most things are made, but then when you hear some weird AI like aliasing or artifacty thing, it like wakes up a part of my brain again, like when I first started producing music and doing sound design. And I'm like, ooh, I want to figure out how to do that. There's like this sound that's like gritty and smooth but like kind of vocally, but like thick and yoinky. Like, what is that? And it just opens up that new perspective again for me.
That's cool.
Yeah. For anyone listening at home, if you are going to dabble in Suno and feed it your ideas, just make sure you're not on the free subscription and the pro subscription, because with the free, and make sure you're reading the terms and conditions, because with the free subscription, they own the output. So yeah, just be careful.
That's a good pro tip. I didn't realize that.
So with AI, the main instinctive reason I haven't been using it is it has to do with my personal agenda, and my own goal is to remind people of what they can do with their own hands and achieve results that Maybe they think they have to get a ton of new hardware, get a ton of new third-party plugins. So this has kind of been an ongoing thing for me before AI was in the conversation. And a lot of what I do is something that is cool, but then it becomes miraculous once you find out the type of effort with the accessible tools that I put into it. And so I think just in communication, if I were to incorporate AI in the ways that it's being conventionally used right now, it will kind of like socially negate the effort I'm putting in by kind of people's ideas that they don't really know what it's handling. I guess another reason, I mean, I do like the stem separation and the search for similar files. And the one time I had a great time using AI, this was so cool, was in Synplant 2.
Ooh.
So here, I'll keep this as short as I can, but basically, Synplant 2, you can drag in a sound and it'll use AI to try to figure out what was synthesized. And the only paradox I found was that that's kind of the goal of me trying to make something from scratch, is to get to that point. So when people are excited to do that, to then rip it apart, they're almost like, you can make a cake and then rip it back into eggs and flour and sugar. And I'm like, well, I wanted the cake, but I was thinking, what is one sound I would never want to go into Serum or Massive or Operate and try to make from scratch? And it's human vocals. So what I did is I took like a Soulja Boy acapella, I consolidated each syllable and ran it through its own instance of Synplant, and it made some weird version of the vocals that was kind of intelligible, like in the remix. And so I think the main point for me is using AI to reduce the amount of time so we can focus on effort rather than taking away our sense of effort to then just focus on how much can we do this over and over again. But that was my one time where I was like, I would do that over and over and over again, and it wouldn't really cross the ethical boundary of, well, how much is he doing, or is my work at risk of falling into someone else's ideas? So.
Sick. Yeah, I use sound similarity search. I use the stem separation. Both are amazing tools. I don't really use generative AI, just in the same sense that I don't really like putting 3 splice samples together and calling it a song. It's just creatively unfulfilling. I want to get into the weeds. I feel like I need to put in a certain amount of effort to have creative ownership over the work. But I am working on a tool that does use AI to empower creators and teach them production with my boy Felipe over there. So if you're interested in that,
it's fire.
Come talk to us.
It's actually really
pretty
cool.
exciting. Yeah.
We were playing with it at the Airbnb the last couple of days. It's pretty mind-blowing. So stay tuned. Those are all the questions that we had for today. Huge shout out to everybody for being here. Big shout out to Ableton for hosting this event this weekend and having all of us here. Make sure you guys check out all these producers on this panel. They're all super talented. If you haven't listened to their music, go stream it. Give them some love. Just give a round of applause for Ableton for everything they do. Cool. And last but not least, shameless plug, if you want to check out new episodes, you can subscribe. I'll be sending out free downloads and a lot of other information, upcoming events that you can be a part of if you're listening online. Just go to abletonpodcast.com/newsletter. You can get some more info there. But yeah, much love to all you guys. Thanks again to Alberto and Tony for all you guys do. And stay tuned.
Thank you.
One more round for Dan over here for putting all this together. You know he loves it.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. This is Dan Giffin. I also make music as Philia. If you don't hate me or the podcast, please leave a 5-star review. It would help me out a lot. And click that subscribe button wherever you're listening. Also, we finally launched a new merch store, so grab some swag. There's a bunch of really fun memes, t-shirts, hoodies, really high quality merch made for producers, and use the discount code PODCAST to save some money. Check out the newsletter if you haven't. You'll be the first to get new episodes, some free downloads, some other cool things, exclusive events that I'll be sending out occasionally. You can find all of that and a lot more at the links in the show notes. Once again, thank you for listening. Much love, and I'll see you next time. Later.